our speaker, Mr. J Berry. Mr. Berry is founder, owner, and president of J Berry Nursery, supplying ornamentals for large box stores and grocery stores across 27 states. He is from Granbury, Texas, and completed his education from Tarleton State, Texas A&M University, and the University of Arkansas. He started his career as a propagator and has held roles in production management and new product development in both Texas and Alabama. He has served many leadership roles, including former president of the Horticultural Research Institute and International Plant Propagator Society, SP, as well as international president of the IPPS, board member of the Friends of National Arboretum, served on the USDA Woody Germplasm Committee, and has been actively involved in the American, Alabama, and Southern Nursery Associations. He has had a very impressive career, and the plant brands he has released and numerous patented plants have had worldwide impact on horticulture. Today, he's here to talk about his career thus far, so please give your full attention over to Mr. Berry.
Thank you, Brooke. I'm honored to be here. Dr. Dringa was kind enough to ask me to show up, and it's a pretty big deal to me to come back to my alma mater to be a speaker at this seminar series. I'm a class of 70 and grew up in Hood County, up the river. I grew up on a river farm. Growing up on the river is, as the ancient philosopher Heraclitus said, we both step and we do not step in the same rivers. We are and we are not. Explaining change in the context of dipping one's toe into a moving stream is also similar to the stream of life. And today we'll talk about my horticultural, the streams that I've crossed, and in some cases, the oceans that I've been carried across. Hood County, does anybody know where Hood County is? Southwest of Fort Worth, 30 miles. It's a small county, and the Brazos River is very serpentine through that county. There are many creeks and bottomlands that, as a kid, I was told that Hood County had more pecan trees, native trees, than any other county in the state. We had 2 farms on the river. One of them had a pecan tree that produced 700 pounds of native nuts one year. I got to play on my own private sandbar on the Brazos River. Sadly, I think in 1970, the Brazos River Authority impounded the water. My sandbar's gone. My pecan trees are gone. But one thing I think, whether it's true or not, I want to believe it, that if you look at the native range of Carya illinoisensis, the range is from southern Illinois into Mexico. And if you were to figure out where the midpoint was, I like to think it was our family farms. I know that there were not only pecans in those river bottoms, but there was pig nuts and other forms of hickory. So I have a real soft spot for the pecan trees. But beyond the pecan trees, wanted to give you a little bit about the Berries came to Texas around 1835 from Virginia, entering through St. Augustine, and they free-range cattle, eventually settling in Johnson County and free-ranging up to 1,200 head of cattle all the way down to Brownwood. My grandfather, Dad, died before he was born, but he must have had some aunts and uncles and grandparents that really imprinted him with my values. My dad had a 7th grade education. His eyesight did not allow him to continued to study. His dad went to the Adrian Christian College across the river, which was the first site of Texas Christian University. So our family believed in education where possible. There were 9 kids in my family. I was the baby boy. I farmed. We were a farm family. We grew peanuts, cotton, cattle, watermelons, not because I saw cash out of watermelons and pecans, but we did. Peanut revenues, cotton revenues, cattle, all that went to the bank. So it wasn't the cash that created my affinity for horticultural crops, but it was nurtured by my dad. He had the foresight to develop a watermelon that was appropriate for the Fort Worth market in the 40s and the 50s. He had crossed tender sweet orange meat with a Georgia sugar loaf, and his goal was to up the Brit sugar level. And whereas other local farmers had to carry theirs to the market and accept market price, Dad had prearranged commitments with all the major grocery stores. Oddly enough, plant breeding pretty well did away with our business. I think the USDA in the late 50s developed a watermelon that could be shipped from Mexico to Chicago. And that, so therefore watermelons were on the market in March, April, May, and they were only ready on our farm by July 4th. So, but he would take us to the prairie every spring, between the Brazos and the Trinity River in Fort Worth. There's a big prairie, that rolling black land. As far as the eye could see, the land was covered with bluebonnets and Indian blankets and wine cups and paintbrushes. And he loved it. He wanted to share that with us. On our farm, I enjoyed the wine cups and assorted phlox, sandier type native flowers. So my love for horticulture was nurtured and came early. I talked about the berries coming to Texas. My mother migrated somewhere around 1920 in a wagon train for 3 weeks. The family moved from the Ozark Mountains to north central Texas. I don't know if it was job opportunities. I think my grandfather followed a brother down here. But the amazing part of that, my Aunt Anna Mae rode the wagon from Arkansas for 3 weeks. She flew back to Fayetteville, Arkansas on Air Force One in her lifetime. My uncle had gotten to be pretty high up in Democratic politics at the state level, and Lyndon Johnson invited my aunt and uncle to go see Texas and Arkansas play for a national title. So that's pretty amazing that she didn't go to the moon, but in your life, you will know people that go to the moon. We didn't grow sweet potatoes for commercial reasons, but we had an acre of sweet potatoes for our family and our neighbors. The Hood County Fair was coming up, and we had a sweet potato patch. And so Dad and I tried to find 12 nicely matched, smooth sweet potatoes. And I don't know what the variety was that we had planted, but we looked and we were having some luck, but we pulled up one hill of sweet potatoes. It had 12 perfectly smooth, perfectly sized sweet potatoes. So I entered those into the fair. I won, and then we ate them. I didn't know at the time that I was experiencing a sport mutation, but I'm absolutely positive that was a sport mutation. Later in my career, I did do some sweet potato work at the University of Arkansas. And that potato that we found was what the scientists were trying to get to. Went to Tarleton State 1 year, 2 years. And first semester I took botany, and the book was about that thick. The instructor was Dr. Eugene Yufeng Xin, and his Chinese accent was about that thick. Well, these ears had never heard any other dialect. So it was pretty torturous, but I dove into the book because I wasn't getting anything out of the lecture. But I've had mentors throughout my career. At Texas A&M, I got to study under Dr. Blackhurst. So he was an instructor. He wasn't known too well for research that he was doing. But one day I was leaving Crocker Hall and focused on probably a plant pathology test that I had coming, and something drew my eye to the flower bed. And what is that? So I go straight to Dr. Blackhurst and I said, Dr. Blackhurst, what does cannabis look like? Oh, look, get that second shelf, that third book from the end, page 79. Did you find some? I don't know. But obviously some student had dumped out a packet of seeds and stems, and they had germinated. So, but Dr. Perry was he was elderly in his career, late in his career, sort of like me, but he had done the original Spanish hybrid onion, which was revolutionized the onion production, not only here in the state, but around the world. Dr. Pike followed him and took it even further. Dr. Benton Story was a great researcher here at A&M, and he was a great educator, and he put students first. Our department wasn't very big in terms of enrollment, at least in the horticulture club. There seemed like 5 or 6 people that looked like me, and 5 or 6 people that I think were from the Caribbean. But we sold pecans and we sold oranges for money for the horticulture club. There was no faculty control on the treasure. So we had a lot of money. We'd go to Northgate every Thursday night, have an executive committee meeting. There'd be Billy Bob Barnett. Who knows who Billy Bob Barnett is? He was a star basketball athlete here. He'd be there every Thursday night, probably every night. He went on to found Billy Bob's in Fort Worth, the largest honky tonk in Texas. So that was, we took liberties. There were a couple other shenanigans that we pulled off as a student that probably wasn't appropriate, but it was part of our Texas A&M education. How do you problem solve? How do you critically think? Here's the problem, you go find the answer. And it was interesting that when I moved to Alabama a few years later, the Auburn graduates seemed to say, there's no answer, it's not in the book. Now, that's not where I'm coming from. There is an answer, we got to find it. And that's not to discount Auburn education in total. I've got 2 son-in-laws and a son that are graduates of Auburn, and eventually things changed, and I felt like they were probably the best land-grant university in the country to put students first. They were doing good research, but Auburn were very conscious that they were there to teach. At A&M, I met a lifelong friend, Dr. David Creech. David is a professor emeritus at Stephen F. Austin University. He's a lifelong friend. One thing I experienced at Tarleton and here was that there were lots of little scholarships coming my way. They made it possible for Texas farm boy to get a good education. So I hope that when my time is done, that I will have given back to young people like you that need help. I always told my children, said, you're gifted athletically, socially, physically, you got all the gifts. Your job is to produce more than you consume. And I'll support you if it's health, if it's legal and moral, contributes to the welfare of mankind. I think that's all of our responsibilities that have the intellect, the gifts, the advantages. People need our help. At Arkansas, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Jim Moore. He was a small fruit breeder, table grapes, but I think he went down in history as the breeder of the thornless blackberry. I remember his technician taking seedlings and putting them under a microscope, and if they could see spines on a seedling, it got tossed. They were segregating at the earliest possible stage. And I did a similar screening on some breeding of tropical hibiscus to pathogens. I would expose them to epidemics early. And after 4 years, 5 years, I eliminated all susceptibility to leaf pathogens on hibiscus rosa sinensis. So then I moved into my professional career. There I am at age 26, 27. I don't know how old I was, but Dr. Fred Davies was a new faculty member here, and he brought his class. I was down at Greenleaf Nursery Company propagating, and I'm a pretty good student, and Fred was new, and I felt so superior because I could teach the Dr. Fred Davies a thing or two about horticulture based on my experiences. But Fred, he's still a great friend. He went on, he's the author of the authority textbook on plant propagation. So I had good luck. One of the major influences in my career was I was associate director of research for the Southern Nurserymen Association. And there would be maybe 60 land grant universities. Mike, you probably were there, but it would be a 2-day opportunity for scientists to communicate, present results, and to get publishing. I developed really good, deep friendships that maintained to this day with people like Dr. Mike Durrick, University of Georgia, Tom Yeager at University of Florida, J.C. Ralston at NC State. I mean, some really towering figures in the horticulture. Along with that, I was very integrated with, at this point in time, at Flowerwood Nursery in Mobile, Alabama. And I got to know horticultural greats like Mr. Tom Dodd, Johnny White, Sidney Meadows, Greg Smith. These figures have been inspirational to me and very supportive of me through my career. International Plant Propagators is a organization whose motto is to seek and to share. I was regional president, international delegate, and eventually international president. So that has afforded me travel and speaking opportunities in Japan and New Zealand. In New Zealand, it it's been significant to me, and I hope I've made some lasting impacts within that international plant propagators community. FONA is the Friends of the National Arboretum in Washington, D.C., and it's a nonprofit support for the National Arboretum. I was invited to be on that board, and I served probably 2 terms there. I knew the director of the Arboretum is Richard Olson. I knew him from the Southern Nurseryman researchers group as a student. So have rubbed elbows with a lot of people that are in high positions, and I've known them since they were students like you. But being on the FONA board was fun because you sat with some pretty powerful figures within Washington, D.C., the women behind the men, congressmen's wives, Susie Helms, she was Richard Helms, the CIA director's wife. But the biggest honor was to be in a room with Sandra Day O'Connor, who was an honorary member. And my daughter was in Georgetown, so it was convenient. I always had a date, and Jessica and I got to go to some wonderful parties because there was always a social event when we met. So my life has been really rich, and opportunities to travel and to meet people and to engage and share my gifts. I was on the USDA Woody Germplasm Committee, and I don't know if you know Peter Bredding. Do you know Peter? He was the chief. Do you know him? We were having our meetings up in Beltsville, and we'd heard, it was just sort of a industry sounding board for the grant system, the germplasm repositories that the USDA sponsored across the US. And I made comment, Peter, I said, well, I think everything is going well, but there's one area that's underserved. It's along Interstate 10. Well, that's all I said. But after the meeting, he said, I heard what you said, and I agree. So fast forward a few weeks, and he said, I think we can do something in Georgia or Mississippi. What do you think? I said, I think Mississippi, because you could reach Oklahoma, you could reach Maryland with work. So he said, well, let me call you back. He said, I think we can do it. He named someplace up in the Delta where there's cotton and soybeans, as far as I can see. And there's a little opportunity in Poplarville, Mississippi, which has a junior college. Mississippi State, USDA has some activities there. So it was possible politically because of Thad Cochran was the senator and he was head of Senate Appropriations. So the Thad Cochran Horticultural Center in Poplarville, Mississippi was an idea that I had, and I had support for it. So the building was completed. It was a $10 million facility. And within 2 weeks, Katrina had hit New Orleans. FEMA took it over, and it was base operation for Hurricane Katrina disaster relief. But I'm not sure what all they're doing now. I think it's mostly a small fruit substation now. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand and ask it on the spot. I spent 25 years in Alabama, and in 2006, my son and I decided that Texas was a ripe opportunity. It was a large market, economically vibrant and highly commoditized. Every landscape had the same old, same old, same old. So over my career, I had done a lot of plant introductions. Before I get further into J Berry Nursery, I've been to China probably 15 times as a consultant. And I've had some experiences that I'd like to tell you about, but I can't. But Dr. Alan Lang was a greenhouse specialist, University of Wisconsin trained greenhouse grower, and he was a consultant in China. He was Taiwanese, but his business was in mainland. And I didn't know him, but he called me one day, said, everybody I talk to says you're the guy to go to China. He said, I have no expertise in woody ornamentals or container production. And if you are open to it, come to China. So at one point in time, I had a pretty high name recognition within the horticultural circles in China. What shocked me about China 20 years ago was the amount of public horticulture that was happening. I mean, they had so many people to employ, low skill, but I think they were environmentally sensitive too, appreciating the beauty. But it served a purpose to give a lot of people jobs. And I've had some phenomenal experiences in China. Don't eat local delicacies. This is a little bit of information I can give you. But when I would not go every 5 years and I would go, I'd be shocked at how much progress there was. But early days, they were harvesting gigantic trees in the wild. They'd cut them back to nothing. They'd put them in a little pickup, and there'd be a bunch of Chinamen hanging on the pickup, and they'd wrap the tree with jute, a type of rope that will keep the moisture in. And they could move a tree without any dirt, just some roots and a big old stump. I saw loropetalum that were immaculately trimmed into specimens, really an art farm. So they had the labor to do all that. But I think the last time I was there, a friend of mine, Tom, I'd known him ever since I started. He was a grower for Gourmet, which was a container nursery. And he organized a banquet when there were a lot of friends that I'd seen many, many times in China. And he gave a toast. He says, Jim, I've listened to every word you've said. I've read everything you've written, and you have made me successful. And I could see that. His nursery really looked good. So I felt very honored to be in a position that I could impact the Chinese industry. A new plant over there, they'll sell 1 million of them first, right out of the bat. I had sent some Photinia fraseri cuttings over there. They did not have Photinia fraseri. 2 years later, they had 2 million of them stuck in the ground. And now when I do go, I don't care what city it is, Photinia is a well-behaved and much appreciated plant all over China. So no questions? But we started J Berry Nursery in 2006. I got a license on knockout rose. And Home Depot knew who I was. So we launched a business pretty dang quick. I had the know-how. My son is a great businessman. So together, we did what we've done, we did together. He spent a lot of time working on finance. Because if you're going to serve somebody like Home Depot, you got to have some volume, and that takes some money. We have a reliable partner, solid financial investor out of Miami. I had a little money, and Jonathan had some money. So we're in an 18-and-a-half-year-old company. You know, you have to examine who are you. We did a predictive index to determine innate characteristics of my staff, and I'm a maverick. That's what I tested. Well, what do mavericks do? Mavericks they're not always bad. I cause change. I'm a market disruptor. I don't like all the crepe myrtles that are on the market. I create new crepe myrtles. I don't like tropical hibiscus as they are. I can do something about it. So our values work best when our customers have the same value set. And we are very comfortable with Home Depot. The people are relatable. They're leaders of the world's largest retailer of green goods. They want to hear about my innovations, and they've always been true to their word. And we had to be resilient as a company. With Snowmageddon was -4 degrees. We'd never had that before. And we did what we could. We filled up all of our spaces. Cash flow as a startup has not been easy. At one point in time, Jonathan had received, I think, 19 no's from banks. And on the 20th one, he got a yes. So because of that tenacity, he was 3 years ago, North Texas Small Business Administrator Entrepreneur of the Year. So that's the kind of partner I've got. He's a great role model in terms of his work ethic. I admire the fact that he works with our team and moving forward and not looking backwards. And I hear that from him. Dad, why are you talking about that? That was 2 years ago, you know. So he's been good for me. I still have a role to play in talent development of my production team. I've been through a lot of marketing things and do that pretty good too. When there's an important sales meeting, my son will say, Dad, can you go to Cincinnati and pull this thing off at Kroger? Yeah, I can do that. But so our top 5 customers are Depot, Walmart, H-E-B, Kroger, and Tractor Supply. We are deep, narrow, and deep. I don't have a catalog that thick, but because when you get an order from a Home Depot, it's 6 things for 150 stores. And it's been really difficult, if impossible, for me to integrate independent garden centers, because when I have something available and a Walmart order comes in, it's 6,000 yesterday and none tomorrow, and that's the way we've built our business to talk to big outlets that have big demands. Okay, I don't know what's supposed to be there. Can you hear, can we get the sound on this? Okay. Hello, my name is Jim Berry. We're in Grand Saline, Texas, home of J Berry Nursery. I'm president of J Berry Nursery. Well, my dad was a farmer and he was a good farmer. And I had four brothers, three of them went into agriculture. My sisters generally married into agricultural farmers. That's who I am. And I found my most enjoyment in the horticultural crops, watermelons and pecans. So that sort of told me where I needed to go in college. I've been in the ornamental production all my professional life. And 16 years ago, my son and I decided that Texas was a very desirable economy to start a new business. We specialize in value-added genetics. Everything that we grow has been scientifically developed to be superior. We are a licensed grower of proven winter shrubs, endless summer hydrangea, and then we've developed our own unique genetics in black diamond crepe myrtles, Hollywood hibiscus, season-to-season shrubs. So we grow plants that thrive from San Antonio up to the Canadian border. So, if you're putting product out in a black pot, that consumers expect it to be the best, lowest value. And I had first experience with the flower carpet rose in 1997. It was German breeding, Australian promoted, that was coming to North America. And I got the call, they'd like for Flowerwood Nursery to come up and be part of that. And I said, look, here's Mr. Smith's number and call Mr. Smith. If he wants to do it, so Mr. Smith was nearly 80, very, very wealthy. And he come back, well, told us then we're going to grow 400,000 knockout rose, no, endless summer, flower carpet. That was the longest summer I ever had because it was aimed for a fall introduction. But going through the process of saying, we've got to have a mail order source. We wanted ads in New York Times. We want ads in Better Homes and Gardens and Southern Living. And you're gonna grow them in a pink pot. It's gonna have a sachet of fertilizer on the plant. It was like going to Harvard to get a master's in horticultural marketing, because literally people were talking about flower carpet on airplanes and at grocery stores. It really did penetrate the consumer's mind. So that was a pretty good lesson. And I happened to have a opportunity to replicate that success with azaleas on a different level. But the commodity azalea class all of a sudden was value added and worth more in the consumer's mind. Bailey Nursery out of Minnesota found this one hydrangea that was remandant. And so they branded it, and it's been a success. I did grow a lot of knockout roses, and the owner of the Conard Powell Company graciously gave me a license to propagate when I started my own nursery. And later he told me, he said, Jim, you planted knockouts in the South. So I'd never thought that would be part of my legacy, but he thinks it is. Now, we had a lot of help. There were a lot of knockouts grown. I never thought that a legacy of mine might be Photinia in China, but it is. But my legacy really is the number of people that I've worked with in our industry. I mentioned a lot of the PhDs, but there's the Ken Stewarts, the Pat Ducks, the James King, people that Loretta Watts, the people that made me look real good while, by growing 200,000 of something, 500,000 of something else. In the early days at Greenleaf, we grew 50 to 100,000 pyracantha. You can't find a pyracantha. Yeah, my daughter-in-law found one recently, but ligustrum, things change in the market. Dr. Lowell Catlow at New Mexico State he's probably retired. He was an ag economist and he was a futurist. And he told a group of nurserymen one time, said the market is fluid. I already knew that. Trends affect consumer habits. You couldn't give away a rotunda holly. And 10 years earlier, you couldn't grow enough of them. So I knew that the market was fluid. And he said, and the pace of change is accelerating. Whew. What does that mean? Am I going to have to figure it out and follow everybody? Or do I have the skill set to create the market? I thought I could do that. So basically, we do have market influence. I'll get to the black diamond crepe myrtle here in a minute, but we licensed a nursery in Australia, and they were proclaimed to be the best flowering shrub introduction in 100 years. Now, as all good things, you can get too much of a good thing. Fast forward a few years later, and they've overplanted them, and they've got too much mildew. So I'm a big believer in diversity in the landscape. I've seen Photinia decimated all over the South that started in Atlanta, Raphiolepis in Florida, Evergreen Giant in Florida. All of those got overplanted. So diversity in the landscape is really important and not at the top of a lot of people's mind. Maybe, I don't know if you can hear this. I want to be innovative not only in what we offer as product, but I want my all practices to be innovative. So we are, you see a drone there. We're excited about that drone. We sprayed the elf areas. That doesn't mean anything to you, but we did it with the drone in 45 minutes. Had we done it by hand, it would have been 3 tractors, 3 employees, pretty much all day long. So it takes a lot of different skill sets to run a nursery. I mean, I need somebody with engineering sense, technology sense, financial, sales and relationships. Growing the plants is pretty dang easy. It's the people sometimes that are my problem. Who's ever heard of Hollywood hibiscus? You have. Okay. The tropical hibiscus category was very generic and very large. The plant, there had been no improvement on genetics in a long time. Oh, there were some hobbyists that were breeding for one gigantic, beautiful flower, and DuPont Nursery in Louisiana had made that commercial to a certain degree, and popularized the Cajun hibiscus. There was some breeding out of Europe that was bred for the European market. The plants were small and for indoor use. I gathered up genetics from South Mississippi, California, France, and Louisiana, and began to build what I thought the consumer deserved and what the grower deserved. They're leaf spot resistant, they're white fly resistant. The flowers are durable for 2 to 3 days. The flower bud count is extremely high, and the shrub quality is good. Whenever I hear a grower from the Caribbean, in Germany, I'm in Germany at a trade show with a little Hollywood booth. This Frenchman, well, he's African, but French speaking, he looks at my sign and through his translator, he said, "I know Hollywood." "Oh, how do you know Hollywood?" And he told me the name of the broker out of Florida that he's bought some from. I said, "What do you think?" He went, "That's pretty good, pretty amazing." But I hear the same thing out of South Africa and India and Hawaii that I think I've done something. I've had 2 breeders look at my breeding program, and they both said, "You know what? I'll never breed tropical hibiscus." So it's driving our business. I think 1 million of them went to market last year. And most all that was contract production out of South Florida. We bought the Seville farm down in the valley where we can more cost effectively produce 500,000 Hollywood hibiscus. It's a fact that if the supply chain were up, adequate, they would be on every shelf at Walmart, Tractor Supply, Home Depot, Ace Hardware. And, I didn't mention Lowe's. Lowe's was our biggest customer 3 years ago. And what they saw, they thought that the economy was about to go into a deep recession, and that because my plants were more expensive, that they wouldn't fit future consumer expectations. So they were our biggest account and went away over a 2-year period. But they put a lot of people out of business. But I serve the end consumer. And if I'm envisioning what the consumer wants and needs properly, I cautioned to my son, I said, "Jonathan, our biggest customer can have a corporate meeting and we can be out in the cold, no fault of ours. So, but if we're reading the market right, then there's going to be Home Depot standing in the corner or Tractor Supply saying, 'I get more of y'all's plants now.'" So we've grown the business having taken that big lick with the Lowe's. And I don't want to go back to Lowe's. They don't fit up with my core values. We're very happy with Home Depot. I'm going to shut this down pretty quick. 3 years ago, Kroger invited us to Cincinnati to a Kroger Go Fresh, Go Local small business stimulator. There were 1,600 applicants to the program. 15 would be selected to make a presentation at the Hyatt Regency, pitch 5 minutes to some Kroger people, and then go on a Shark Tank the next day with 7 executives and do a 15-minute presentation. We put on our tuxedos. We were from Hollywood. They wanted Hollywood hibiscus pitched, but we were in the top 5. We were number 1. And that was one of the biggest events I've ever had on product introduction. Another one I would mention was 2012 in Houston at the Texas Nursery Landscape Show. we debuted Black Diamond crepe myrtles and had 75 booths with this brand new crepe myrtle in the booth, and it eventually led to civil disobedience. People were fighting over these plants. So that irritated quite a few of my buddies in the trade. Have you heard of Black Diamond? The precious pink, I don't know if it's up there. It's pretty amazing in that it will flower 3 times on the same panicle. So you get 3 flowering cycles off the same panicle. Crimson Crown has really dark leaves and it's columnar, and it's got really bright red flowers, but on a Black Diamond, I won't say it, Jim, don't say that. But black leaves are important if it's a Black Diamond crepe myrtle. So our customers, they don't come and ask us what's old. They want to know what's new. That's a good position to be in, because if you've been shipping like product year after year with a box store, it's hard to get a price increase. But if you bring something that they've never had, a new SKU, then that resets the economics. You can reset the retail, give the box store the margin that they need, and then elevate your bottom line. So we been a big honor to be here. Now open it up for questions.
Jim, I have a question.
All right.
Pay by scan. Where
Pay by-
are we? Where are we with pay by scan?
Pay by scan is where my product is at the store and I don't get paid for it till it goes through the register. Home Depot instituted that policy, and shortly after we got in business, they were 90% of our business. Son said, "Dad, what are we going to do?" I said, "We're going to embrace it. Not that we're going to like it, but you had to learn it." Kroger is pay by scan to some degree too. We've not worked that out yet, Dan, but pay by scan works if you have the right product in the right condition at the right store at the right quantity. You can overship it and it doesn't sell through. But we get, if we get over 80% sell through, then it's as good as a purchase order.
Do you hire merchandisers that take care of your plants while they're in the local stores?
Absolutely, that's really necessary. We use a Michigan company called Stinchcomb, and they are primary merchandisers for vendors like me, for Home Depot and for Kroger.
Okay.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. What was your question? Yes, yeah. Well, it's the plant, I think the flower color, there's more clarity and more purity compared to the other leading brand. And I'm skating on real thin ice by even showing a picture of the leading brand. Part of my career has been in lawsuits. I've sued and I've been sued, but my dad said, do the right thing, you know, so I've had to stand up for myself. I've had the government sue me and walked away after pretty chunk of money. Felt like I got justice. So, you know, I told my kids, you're going to get things you don't deserve, and you're not going to get things you do deserve. Get used to it. That's life. Now, if I answered your about the azaleas, you know, if you're in Mobile, Alabama, or Richmond, Virginia, you can grow an azalea. But if you're in Austin, Texas, or College Station, things aren't right. The water quality, the soil pH, that's your problem, probably. Yeah, yeah. One change at our nursery that I'm real excited about, and you should be too. I think after World War II, agricultural became industrialized. You know, you had DDT, you had malathion, you had 2 tons of lime per acre, you had 500 pounds of triple 13. But there is a really strong movement on regenerative agriculture. And that is considering the biosphere and the soil. You know, how healthy is that community? We're using kelp for nutrition and plant health. We're using sea salt for plant nutrition. We're using thyme oil, and we're moving away from that industrial age agriculture. There's a lot of beneficial biologicals out there to take advantage of. Our plants have never been healthier, and we've just been doing it for a year or two. But we're in a global business. I've traveled the globe, and you can too, if that's your desire. Tissue culture, I believe, is going to open up a lot of commercial opportunities. Just think of the impact once they get tissue cultured pecans. What a revolution that's going to be. But a lot of production in Africa, mostly annuals in Central America. There's labs in India. Plants are flying all around the world. So it's a global situation. So I mentioned a little bit about regenerative agriculture. I got 2 questions over here. Yes. Pardon? I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing. Am I overwhelmed by everything? No,
No.
no. Why not? Because I've got a good team. I've got a guy that understands. He's a pro in relationships and understanding what Home Depot and Walmart needs. He's been around the track, and he's an excellent mentor and team builder. My son, they've got capabilities that I don't have. So I'm not overwhelmed because I've got the right people in the right seat. And Mike, you had
just put mine was more in plants in the future. It looks like a lot of the work has been on improving existing genetics. Do you know, what's your opinion of the ability for folks to break new species or?
Oh, it's very difficult. It's difficult. The question was, how easy is it to bring in a new species in or a new genus into commerce? It's easier to bring a new species in. There's some familiarity with the genus. But if you bring in Myranthes fragrans, what the hell is that? Well, it's a gorgeous landscape plant in Florida, thrives on sandy soils. It's got exfoliating bark. It's evergreen. It has edible berries on it. Pollinators love it. I could talk till I'm blue in the face. and it wouldn't make an impression. It's very difficult. But I was in Orlando last month and looking at the landscape, public policy is forcing commercial landscapes to go native. So I think that's what eventually will happen in Texas for water conservation, for the adapting to the changing climate. Public policy comes to bear and it will create markets. But just something new out of left field, I don't have the breath to make it go. Yes, sir. I was shipping, the question, do I do any international business? I was doing about $300,000 export to China a few years ago. And about that time, Trump and Xi Jinping got in their little tussle. So that sort of dissuaded me. But I told him, I said, I don't need to be distracted by a small order. And that was a small order. I said, $1 million would get my attention. And they said, not a problem. And then the dust up came. When we license intellectual property, like Hollywood hibiscus or a plant patent in India, we send them clean stock and let them reproduce them under a license. Yes. 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 You, there's some overlap. You know, Hollywood hibiscus are enjoyed everywhere, but black diamond is crepe myrtles. That's a regional product. And we grow some cold hardy viburnums for the north. So we segregate climate adapted plants, primarily zone hardiness, cold hardiness. Yes. Yeah, to some degree, yes. I've noticed some scale. You know, I get frustrated because the recyclable process is not uniform at all. So unfortunately, a lot of our plastic goes in the dumpster. But if you look up Blackmore and Elipot, it's a growing system that can eliminate a lot of the plastic from the supply chain. So look that up. Blackmore, Elipot. Oh, I sure would. Yeah. We are very dependent on a H2A. It's a federally regulated agricultural source of labor. We bring in about 90 of those for a 9-month period. We don't get local applicants. We've got about 30 people that are local. But new applicants local, they're just not available. What? Yes.
An example, you've introduced a lot of plants. Is there one that you really thought was going to be a winner and for some reason it missed the mark?
I've tried to forget those instances successfully. Yeah, one more question back here. You know, there's really too many mop head azalea breeders out there. I mean, most of that is done in Europe. I don't know that anybody's working down here for water quality or high pH. Just be content with buying that floral hydrangea and enjoying it for 3 weeks. And that technology is amazing. How they take cuttings in spring in Canada, they grow a little bushy plant, they put it in the cooler for 500 hours, they pull it out, they clean it out, put it back in the cooler, and these little well-branched, light, small plants will go, and there's a flower bud on every terminal. That's efficient. Well, thank you very much. You've been a good audience.